Lisa and Karma Book 3. The Easter Bunny. 3rd edition. Author, Brenda Wardle. Chapter 1. The Gathering. Once upon a time at sunset, under a ginormous African tree, sat the elders, Nuku, Igwe, and Sulu Abi. Those who had gathered to listen were parents and some of their children. Sitting alone in a corner was Alex, the quiet loner. They eagerly awaited the feaster and the origins of the festival of Easter. Chapter 2. April at the Cradle. The elders would now take turns to have their say and teach. And they would tell the children at least one story each. The month of the year was April. The place was called the Cradle. The topic was the Easter Bunny, and many had found it funny. Already there were naughty giggles. And as some kids did the wiggle, others opted for the jiggle. Chapter 3. Nuku, Igwe and Sulu Abi. Nuku, who knew the folklore, had many tales in store. First there was the rabbit, on the face of an African mask. Igwe, the historian, was also equal to the task. Sulu Abi, the anthropologist, being familiar with many cultures, brought with him some puzzles in the shape of wooden sculptures. The elders would go back in time, telling stories, using rhythm, meter, and rhyme. The children were asked to be silent, and only one was defiant. Chapter 4. Nuku's Tale. Nuku's tale took them way back to a West African tribe. She cited an old source, an eminent and well-known scribe. This was the story of a hare, banished to the moon by force. This hare had outwitted the lion, taking credit for a win unfair. Until then, it was king of the jungle. But the hare ensured the bungle, and the punishment came very soon, with the banishment of the hare to the moon. Chapter 5. Igwe's Tale. And when Igwe got his turn, he ensured that they would all learn. They needed the ability to discern between a piker, a hare, and a rabbit, their diets, their features, and habits. Alex was becoming restless, disgruntled, and even breathless. He recalled his bedtime stories, where the lion had all the glory. He also knew for sure that a rabbit and not a hare had been banished to the moon. But as he looked at his uncle, he saw that frown and signature, warning stare. Chapter 6. Sulu Abi's Tale. Sulu Abi was excited. The children were immediately delighted to hear of his many great travels. He beguiled them with fanciful tales from Germany and Italy, from Switzerland and from the Seychelles. And when Sulu Abi announced that after the tales, there would be a surprise, they knew that they would be beguiled, and that their imaginations were about to take flight. Chapter 7. Eastertide. It was during the season of Lent, when many Christians decided to repent. They would pray and embark on a fast. Although for some, it did not quite last. Eggs would be roasted or boiled. Then they would be colored or foiled. Chapter 8. Germany. Germany was where it all began. With the Easter hare and her clan. She would be robed out and dressed as a judge, and it was time for the naughty to budge. For all those kids who were good, there would be toys and sweets, not just food. On her arm, she would carry a basket, and the Easter eggs would go to the fastest. And so, it came to be that the Easter hare they had seen. But many moons later, the rabbit and its baby the bunny, came to dominate the scene. Chapter 9. Switzerland. In Switzerland, the land of chocolates, as Mother Earth ushered in spring, the air would be filled with a zing. In nursery rhymes and folk tales, with Easter eggs hidden behind bales, grannies would lullaby about cuckoos, as they slipped off their warm, morning shoes. People would get down to their chores, baking or running to the stores, for Easter cakes and supplies and much, much more. And the spirit of Easter would spread, gilded rabbits and ribbons of red, which lead to certain things, left unsaid. Chapter 10. Italy. In Italy, on the other hand, grandeur marked their appreciative stand. Young and grown alike would revive ancient practices of old. The fanfare was splendiferous and bold. In Florence, on Easter morning, not long after day starts dawning, crowds would watch the holy procession, and the explosion of the cart would invoke loads of passion. And though the bunny is rare, and very often, so is the hare, this fanciful, ancient cart has been there during Easter, right from the very start. Chapter 11. The Seychelles. In the Seychelles, Easter is very exciting. Celebrations are always unique and outstanding. There would be food stalls and music galore, with locals ensuring a roar. For Seychellois, whilst deeply religious, plan their celebrations, and they are utterly fastidious. From the main islands of Praslin and La Digue, whilst climatic conditions are en vogue, even religious processions are held with flair, with festive calm, all the way to Mahe. Chapter 12. The Skies. After the spell-binding tales, 'twas Nuku who took over the reins. She sweetened up the deal with some fudge, for she knew the kiddies would budge. She asked them to lie on their backs. For pillows, they used lucky beans, in red sacks. They were asked to look up to the skies, to observe and not to tell any lies. They giggled in excitement, transported and ecstatically enchanted. And as their parents watched, Nuku could tell, their parents too were touched. Chapter 13. The Sightings. And as they looked up to the skies, in the highest, high of highs, Alex was certain he saw Henge, Chinese goddess of the moon, known as Chang'e. A girl then shrieked in delight, for she was the first to see a very bright light. Dominating the moon was a rabbit, its bunnies, a pika, a hare and some leverets. Chapter 14. Kuhuni. Kuhuni Kavit. Then something else appeared. It mocked the kids, then disappeared. It was a giant and chubby white rabbit, prancing around as though out of habit. It wiggled its tail at the kids, then let out a giant big fart. It grabbed a handful of stars, sending them flying down to earth just like darts. As the rabbit swirled around, it darkened the sky. And all the kids could say was, "Wow, wow, oh my." This was the Lunar King Rabbit, called Kuhuni, Kuhuni Kavit. Chapter 15. The Easter Hare, Pika. The cousin was envious. It had no tail and looked so jealous. Next came out the hare, bigger and brighter and fair. There were shrieks of delight all around. The kids went silent, not a sound. The hare dressed in clothes like a judge, carrying eggs, and some green, gooey sludge. But suddenly the skies grew dark. There was nothing in sight, not a spark. The children were now anxious and cold, but the sun reappeared and the stories continued to be told. Chapter 16. The three strangers. 3 strangers had in the meantime stopped by. They spoke to their parents and the kids wondered why. The first was an imam from Qatar, who had the demeanor of a shining star. When he was told what the tales were about, he excused himself, choosing to opt out. 2 strangers were left behind, a priest and a Jewish rabbi. Chapter 17. The priest. The priest then told him the story of Jesus, stuck on the cross, and his glory. She explained the importance of Easter, and its place on the Christian roster. She told of the Easter lily, the resurrection, warning him not to be silly. Chapter 18. The rabbi. Next up was the Jewish rabbi, who stared first at Sulu Abbey. Then he spoke of the first fruits of the barley, and explained the Passover, rather kindly. Passover and Easter, he said, were not really to be compared. Though both were very important, their symbolism was slightly distant, and only in importance were they essentially the same. There was much, however, which differed, but the children were happy. He came. Chapter 19. Loads of fun. And, as dusk approached and learning came to an end, Igwe pretended to be digging in the sand. Sulu asked them to shut their eyes. First, he let out a big surprise. They were asked to scurry and run, grabbing eggs and paint brushes for fun. But the biggest and best surprise, Sulu said, awaited the children the very next day. Chapter 20. A Greater Tomorrow. In the back of the yard, he said, would be Easter eggs hidden in hay. In other obscure parts of the farm, would be toys and bright Easter cards. There would be marshmallow chicks or peeps. And the best gatherer, the first prize, would reap. Their parents would cook up a feast. And those who had fasted through Lent would be able to eat meat at least. After all the litter had been collected, the kids and their parents went home. And it turned out to be that night would be long for some. Chapter 21. Easter Sunday. Early on Easter Sunday, before he could even pray, Alex strolled down to the river, taking with him some pieces of silver. And just as he entered the forest, still prim, proper, and modest, he encountered a light brown hare resting on its hind legs as though in despair. Chapter 22. A dare ultimately fair. The hare circled him thrice, then led him to a place, still and nice. In the corner between the branches of Christ's thorn, dazzled a huge golden egg as though forlorn. Alex had discovered the best. Now he did not care about the rest. All the other naughty kids would be diving for eggs, whilst he would be resting his legs. Like him, the lonely hare kept to itself until it gave in to a dare. It sprinted across the meadows in a game which was ultimately fair.